Hello from wherever you are, and welcome to Let's Play Games. I'm John McFarland, Adult Services Librarian for National Public Libraries, and I hope you'll join me in learning or rediscovering some of the more common and uncommon games out there. So last time we covered the game of Dominoes, specifically Double Six. I'd more than welcome you to look at that and learn some of the basics of Dominoes, but I will cover it here in a moment, some of the basics as we go into this as well, so it's not required. But this adds a couple more. We have a set of double 12 dominoes, and it is a somewhat longer game, but it's a lot of fun. It's called Mexican Train. Let's get stuck in. So, a little bit about the basics, core rules of dominoes. In order to play pieces against each other, you're going to place them side by side. And what you have to do is match, we'll put this in the center here for a second, one piece with another. So, this is a 12 pip has to connect to a 12 pip. This would not work. This is invalid. And what you're going to do is, throughout the scope of the game, you will be placing like with like. So it's just matching. Even if you're not fully able to count super quickly, you can still make this work. The double pieces are very important pieces on the board, and because of that notation, we have here they're placed on the side. So they count as a specific double marker. So for this game, since we have a lot more pieces to work with than before, we are going to be playing it with 3 fictional players here just to keep everything together. And this functions in rounds. So one of the things that you do in each round of this is you're going to go by starting with the double 12. The double 12 will be your starting point. You'll place it in the center here to indicate what round it is. From here, you will then be playing off of that in order to keep a train going, and a train that can be either your own as an individual player or a community-based train, which would be open to everyone. So from here, the most important thing to do is washing your pieces. How do you wash pieces? And I don't mean this by getting them wet in any fashion. I mean, this is the way for dominoes to be shuffled. If you're familiar with mahjong tiles as well, similar process here. So this is going to be in order from 12-12, 11-11, 10-10, all the way down to where each has their blank on the bottom. And the easiest way to handle this is a group effort. Typically you can do this on one's own, but it becomes a whole lot easier when you have a group. So you're going to place all of these upside down in order to properly shuffle. And you're going to space them out since there should be a whole lot of space where you're playing. So let's get this figured out real quick. And with all of the respective players, so you can do a certain amount of players, but the theoretical maximum is like 8. At that point, you've got a pretty crowded table, but if you've got a big enough table, you can absolutely make this work. So our example with 3 will allow for us to show just a simplistic version of this. And now what you're going to do is, as a group, you're going to move these pieces around with your hands. Oh. And sometimes pieces will fall off, especially if you don't have a large enough size table to do it. So, real quick, let me get these shuffled up, and then we'll work on distribution. One sec. So last time I did talk about the development of dominoes moving from Asia, specifically China, to Europe. It also made it another direction. Through Chinese immigrants to the United States, to Latin America, we saw the game of Pai Gao, make 9 is the rough translation here, and it was a double 9 based game. And it developed in Latin America and was spread fairly quickly as a way of leisure among Chinese immigrants who were working on the railroad system as it was being developed. This also got picked up at the Latin American population who really took a liking to this game, to the point where in the late 1800s it was actually known as Domino Cubano, the Cuban domino game. More on that in a minute. So what I went ahead and did, because we have 3 players, they get 15 dominoes each. So that way you've got a pretty wide selection. As this is the 12th round, the way you start your train is by having a 12 to move. You are obligated to play a piece if you have it. And the whole notion is you are trying to build a specific train based off of your numbers here. So let's say this player's train starts from here, this player's train starts from here, this player's train starts from here, and we'll have one community railway that is open. So probably be right here. Now, on your first turn, you can actually play as far as you can into your pile. So in theory, you could go out in one hand. However, that's very rare. So what's going to happen is you're going to look at your pieces and sort of put like with like. I'd recommend grouping it by the largest number you have. So that way you can kind of keep track of, okay, if this is played, I can play with X. If this is played, I can play with Y, that sort of thing. So I've got some 12s here, which will be helpful to me. Some 11s, 10, 9. But keep an eye on the ones that are on the bottom because pieces are going to be played subsequently where you can't play them. So what you're going to do here is, okay, I know that if I play one of these, I need a way to connect to other ones. So if I play this 1, does it connect to another 1? Yes. Does this connect to something else? Maybe. So we're going to play like this. That connects to a 1, so like has to match like. So now you can play one of these. Does this connect to anything? I don't want to play this because it'll get me to a double, but that's not really helpful here. But what you can do is here or here. And this is where you try and, before you even start, try and map it out. Try and get things as far as possible. So we're going to play here. And then that connects with that one. And that connects with that one. And as you're playing along, you'll have to make some odd shapes. Usually some people like doing this particular motion to kind of conserve some space here. So we're actually not doing too bad here at the start. Connects to here, which connects to here, which connects to here. That's as far as I can go right now. So notice for this first round of turns, there's nothing that can be done yet because they don't have a 12 to play. This will happen on occasion. Now, we've gone around fully, so this player's gotten a really good head start. But notice they don't have a 10 count to use. After the first round of turns, you can create a public railway. So this is the new train that we're going to be operating off of. And actually, for simplicity, I'll move it over here. And I'm just going to put a little train. You can use pennies, quarters, buttons, whatever you want. This indicates that it is the public available train. So instead of being able to place a whole bunch at once, you are only going to be able to place one at a time. So now, play moves to here. So from here, you've got that double over here, which is an intriguing piece to play. What you always have to worry about is closing that double. We're going to place it in the middle. You're actually granted an extra turn for having that double played in order to close it. If you cannot close the double, your train will actually be stopped. But they can play here on this public train and close it up. So that is the end of their turn. Now it's a 4 to over here. I'll play this one. This person does not have a 5 or something to draw. So now they have to draw and they can't play it. Their train is now open. So from here, until you can play on to your piece, your train, in order to close it, it's now open for anyone to use until the train is closed. This is part of the element of the game where you open up spaces even if they don't have a way to start their own trains. You can still come out based off of this. This is a pretty big simplification of the way that this game is played, but you are going to take time and turns in order to make trains open and close where needed, play the doubles while closing them until you are completely out, at which point you count what is remaining left. So let's say, for the sake of conversation, that we have this entirely laid out. Everybody has played their subsequent pieces. From here, you're going to count the remaining points in your hand. So in counting these up, you're going to go by, there's 11 here, 6 and 8, so that's 14. This will end up being 72 points. So from here, you're going to place on your scorecard, you can just keep track on a piece of paper for the 12-12 round, that you have 72 points left over that were unable to be completed. For the other players, someone will have 0 for that round. So the idea is to have the lowest score possible. What makes this game fairly competitive is that you've got 12 rounds in order to do this. And actually, correction, 13 rounds because the double plank is the last round for a game total. So even if you have a bad hand and you end up with 72 points or 172 points, you can catch up in the next game by winning and forcing somebody else to have a large number of points. This is a game that can take a long time to play, but it can be competitive and fun. 1 second, a little bit more of the history of this game, because there's a couple more things I want to show you. So I want to talk a little bit about this game as a community game, a space for which people could gather and spend some time. One of the biggest elements of community throughout a lot of our history has been gathering at pubs or taverns or community locations in order to congregate, do business, trade, meet people, socialize. And what better way to socialize than to play a game together? Chess was always one of the popular things in a lot of locations, checkers, but sometimes they can be a little expensive to produce, especially if it's a specialty set. Dominoes are one of the easy games to produce, maintain, and keep track of the pieces a little better and a little more sturdy than some playing cards, which could rip or get wet, and then all of a sudden you have to buy a new deck just to replace one card. So Dominoes really took off as a cost-effective solution for these community spaces, and it also meant the high replay value as long as the pieces didn't chip or break, which was still relatively rare based on the material they were made out of, the bone and ivory that I talked about previously. This became a staple of community gaming spaces for decades. And because of that, its popularity has continued and come through generations. But that's not the only way we interact with dominoes. We've got to talk about the domino effect. More on that in a second. So I decided to move a little bit ahead to a future game. We're currently in the 8th round, as indicated here on the center. Everyone was able to actually have a good start for once, but we now run into a problem where people are, well, stuck. We've got this 4 that's open, we've got this 3 that's open, and another 4 that's open. So notice that this game does snake, so you do need a somewhat large table to make this work, but this is why we've done a lot of the bending here to make sure stuff fits on the table. So now where we're at is there's this open blank here. This is the public one that has snaked all the way around. This is my right-handed players. This is my left-handed players. This one is the center player. So now, as these are open, you can actually play on these open trains. So for example, they can play this 3. It's an open train. The player to my right has to play on this in order to close the train. So seeing as they don't have a 1, that's not going to be possible this round, but in theory, you could close the train that way. This person's getting rid of their pieces. So now they need something. They're not getting anything, so they're going to have to draw. 3 and a blank, so they can at least play here. Now we've got this player. They don't have a 3. They don't have a 4. They don't have a 1. And they don't have a 4. So I have to draw. Their train continues open. So they don't have a 4. They don't have a 3. See how it sequentially goes to where you're just trying to figure out, once you get a piece that you can play on, you can actually close your train. So now this 10 is only usable by you, which not bad. Play moves on over here. They now cannot use this specific space, so they're limited to here, here, and here. So they don't have a 3, they don't have a 4, they don't have a 1. They're going to draw, and they're able to get a 3 on this public. That's at least something. Play moves on. They don't have a 4, but they do have a 2. They're just going to play on there, and play will continue on this way. Now they're going to play here. And remember, since stuff's hidden, we don't know what they have left. We know that they have a 2, so they're going to be pretty close and looking for either an 11 or a 6 to be available in order to go out. We're going to be continuing over here. The public train typically gets a lot of use during gameplay. If you are able to figure out ways in order to make long patterns happen, you can usually get along fairly effectively. The length of your train at the end of the game does not matter, just that you are the one who goes out. So we know this person, they're just needing an 11 or a 6 at this point. They know they can play here. This person is going to play here, being like, hey, I've got an open one. This means that the player to the left is the one that goes out. So this game definitely snakes. The public one got a lot of use here. But let's sort of look at what's left. Here you're going to tabulate the points real quick. So this person's going to have 11 and 7, so 18 points for the center player. It's 22 since that's double 11. Another 12, so that's 34. 40 points for the player to the right. This person, 0 points. So these games can sometimes be very close at the end to where you're not even getting a lot of points. It's pretty rare. We saw in the previous example with the 72 points that it can be a quick exit, and that's worth a lot. So let's look kind of on the board for things that we want to look out for in the future. First off, one of the biggest things at the beginning was here they had 2 different pieces on the public board that could have been used here. Now the question is, were they drawn by players? In this case, no, they weren't. They came from the boneyard. There weren't a lot of these pieces, but from there, this was the largest train at the beginning. It went to about here, this 2-4 piece. The person who was to my left started off all the way over here, so they didn't have that much further to go. It was just a matter of having to use the public space more effectively. The easiest way for you to improve your skill set is by playing this. This is an easy one to set up and practice by. If you have multiple players, you can actually have fewer than 15. Sometimes you can go as low as 10 for 7 or 8 players. Notice there's still plenty of space here. You just have to have a big enough table for it. But in essence, this is a fairly simple game when you come down to it. You're matching like with like. Doubles, they have to be closed. If you can't run on your own train, you can use the public one. If you can't do that, you draw. If you draw and you can put it on yours or the public, you're good. If you can't, you put a piece on your train, making it open. When you play on yours the next time around, that closes the train. This is, in essence, a matching game with a whole lot of simplicity and some basic math at the end. And this is part of the fun, is trying to make it fit on a table and snake it out all over the place. This is why it's one of my favorite games to play, just because it can be a group setting, a party setting, and if you've got a lot of time to make it work, you can definitely have hours of fun with this one. That is Mexican Train. So if you've learned about some logical processes, about the cause and effect, you've probably heard of the domino effect. Can also be the wave effect of something causing an emanation. These pieces are able to, with the right level of balance, able to be placed, which meant that you could place a similar piece behind it. And this became a popular pastime because who isn't familiar with the clacking sound of falling dominoes? This took off, and one of the first times I ever interacted with dominoes personally was setting up a large string of dominoes to make an ornate shape. This became an artistic creativity. There would be television specials every year. This was especially popular in the early 2000s. There would be a domino day in, I believe, the Netherlands, where they would do increasingly large amounts of dominoes in increasingly complex ways, talking about millions of dominoes in different colors and different styles with different effects, like a giant Rube Goldberg machine of just cause and effect. But domino toppling became an oddly interesting pastime for people to use equipment and materials that were relatively easy to procure in relatively large numbers, and made it an oh-so-fun pastime to set them up and knock them down. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in. Next time we will get into another board game, which I'm sure will be more than exciting. Also, be sure to check out some of our great NPL Universe content out there, and specifically our board game collection that we now have available for checkout, and you can ask your local branch about that. See you next time.